You probably know Drain Contagion is the premier league starter for ladder pushers and streamers alike. But why is this? What elements of Drain and Contagion lend itself so heavily to being such a prominent league start build? Well, the major source of this strength is the incomparable clear that this ability combo provides at such a low cost of gear. You can clear most of the game on just random items that you can find while playing. It also has some of the best Legion Stone and Blight map farming capabilities at such a low requirement of gear. Hey guys, I'm Big Ducks, and in this video we're going to talk about the Drain Contagion build that I used as my starter for Delirium 3.10, which had some pretty amazing results. Remember, if you'd like to see more content like this one, the best way that you can support me is to like this video, and if you're new, make sure to subscribe so that you can see the latest up-to-date content on Path of Exile, ARPGs in general, and just whatever other games happen to catch my attention at the time. Also, if you want to see examples of me playing builds similar to this one that is going to be in this video, you can catch me live at twitch.tv/bigducks. So make sure to follow me over there so you can catch the next time that I go live. And last but not least, the best way to be a part of the community is to join my Discord. I'm always on there interacting with the community, having some fun, doing carries, and whatever else seems to be happening at any given time. You can find links to that and everything else in the description below this video. Now, before we actually begin with the guide, let me give you just the taste of what's to come. Welcome to my full guide for the Drain Contagion Trickster. Remember, there are timestamps available to jump to any specific section of the guide that you need in the description, as well as in a comment below this video for mobile users. First, let's go over some of the pros and cons about this build. Some of the pros are that it is one of the best clear builds in the game. You can clear entire screens with the cast of 2 abilities and nothing else. It has high survivability through effective health pool, massive amounts of dodge, evasion, and regeneration. It is very cheap and can scale into endgame without massive investment. And when you are ready to invest, it isn't super expensive to be able to get just enough investment to be able to finish the game. This is solo self-found friendly, as you can do most content in the game with random stuff that you find. However, keep in mind that this guide is going to be completely focused on Trade League, not solo self-found. And also, the build is easy and safe to level. Now, there are a few cons about this build, so let's go through them. This build does suffer somewhat in single target at very high levels, such as Shaper, Cirrus, or Uber Elder. I was personally able to do Shaper and such with no problem with the crafted bow and a 5-link Kintsugi, albeit a little bit slower than a build that has huge single target. However, I did just kind of stand still and face tank Shaper without much of an issue. The build is somewhat hardcore viable, but due to the nature of evasion and dodge, you will occasionally get hit pretty hard. And if you aren't extremely careful and focus on maximizing your defensive layers, you might not survive it. And last but not least, the main combo requires 2 separate abilities and a 3rd ability for single target, as well as additional abilities for utility. The amount of different skills may be a turnoff for some people looking for a simpler playstyle. Now let's talk about the abilities that are actually used in this build. The abilities and links are as follows. Our main skills are Drain and Contagion. Drain is linked with Controlled Destruction, Void Manipulation, Efficacy, Swift Affliction, and Empower. Contagion is linked with increased area of effect, faster casting, and intensify. As for the reasons behind these links, for Drain we're mainly looking for damage over time. Empower also allows us to scale the ability with the crafted bow, as it gives us a massive amount of levels to the Drain ability. As for Contagion, we don't actually use this for damage, we only use it to spread our Drain. So having a larger area of effect, as well as being able to cast it faster, are the main things we're looking for. An additional skill that you will need for single target is going to be Vol Blight. You can use the base version of this ability, however, the Vol version will give you an extra burst of single target occasionally. The links for Blight are Infused Channeling, Void Manipulation, Efficacy, Controlled Destruction, and Swift Affliction. Some other skills that we use are Flame Dash for a movement ability. We have 3 auras, Discipline, Malevolence, and Aspect of the Spider. Aspect of the Spider can be crafted on any piece of gear that you like, however, I do recommend linking Discipline and Malevolence with an Enlighten in your helmet, that we'll talk about later. The only other spell that this build uses is Wither, linked with Spell Totem, multiple totems, and increased duration. This allows us to have multiple totems casting Wither, and the increased duration both increases the duration of the totems themselves, as well as the duration of the Wither debuff. I suggest that if you don't have it, go and download Path of Building. It's a free offline character building tool designed by a member of the GGG team that allows you to fully test and customize your character. You can find links to Path of Building, instructions on updating to the community fork, as well as an import link for this character in the description below this video. As for our skill tree, we focus on gaining chaos and damage over time, as well as health, evasion, energy shield, and dodge. During the early stages of the game, you should focus on obtaining as much health as you can to prevent dying while grabbing the nearby damage over time nodes. As you progress further, you will spread out to obtain the acrobatics and phase acrobatics keystones while further supplementing your damage and health. Upon reaching maps, you will start to move further into the top half of the tree, obtaining the Wicked Ward keystone and moving towards the Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter keystones. Once you reach endgame, our endgame tree has us taking the Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery keystones, as well as filling in the Cluster Jewel slot and some additional nodes around the tree. Our Ascendancy of choice is the Trickster, and the first point we spend will be on Patient Reaper. This will give us some much needed sustain while leveling, as well as a healthy chunk of damage and providing us our insane safety while clearing in maps through regeneration. The next point will be Prolonged Pain. This gives us a substantial increase in damage and utility through skill effect duration, which applies to all of our skills, as well as 20% more damage over time. Our third point will be Ghost Dance. This will further increase our recovery, as well as set us up for the next point that we get with evasion, damage reduction, and movement speed. The final point we get is Escape Artist. This gives us flexibility in our choice of chess piece and provides us stun immunity, spell dodge, cast speed, and a large amount of energy shield and evasion. For bandits, the only useful reward for this build is going to be to kill all bandits and to take 2 additional skill points. As for the Pantheon, for the major soul you can choose between the Soul of Lunaris or Solaris. Before expanding into the additional benefits, I suggest that you start with Solaris, and then upon obtaining the additional benefits, Lunaris is far more powerful. Drain Contagion is a bit different than most builds in that it requires multiple spells to achieve its effect. First, you apply Contagion, which is a weak damage over time effect that applies in a large area. Once you have applied Contagion to the enemies, you then cast Drain, which is a slow-moving projectile which applies a heavy damage single target damage over time. The interaction between these abilities is that any monster that has Contagion on them when they die will spread that Contagion in a circle. However, Drain hitches a ride and applies itself to each enemy in that circle as well. For single target, you will apply Drain to the enemy, drop your Wither totems, and then channel Blight on the enemy until it dies. If the enemy is especially tough, you may need to resummon your totems and reapply Drain occasionally. While leveling, you will obtain Blight at level 2 upon entering town, and this will be the main ability you use until you obtain Drain at level 12 from entering Merveil's Cavern. Blight is very useful throughout the game and is the better option for quickly killing monsters as you walk by them. It takes some time to cast Contagion and Drain, so if it's just a few monsters and they're very weak, you can simply one-tap Blight very quickly to kill them instantly. You will obtain Contagion at level 4, but I don't suggest using it for anything until you obtain Drain. While leveling, your main and only priority is to get Blight and Drain into 4 links and put any extra links that you have into Contagion. Follow the order of the gems listed earlier in this video for each of these abilities. I also highly suggest that you invest in obtaining a Vol Blight gem. If you're a league starting with this build, in the future, the best way to obtain this is to do every Vol side area that you see and use any Vol orbs you find in an attempt to corrupt a Blight gem into a Vol Blight. For in-game mapping, nothing much changes from the basic strategy. Apply Contagion, apply Drain, and watch entire screens die gasping for air as you simulate our current state of affairs in the world. Was that a little bit too real? It might have been a little bit too real, sorry. For bossing, the situation becomes a bit different. You should make sure to save up a cast of Vol Blight for bosses and only use it after you've dropped your Wither totems and allowed them to stack, as well as applied Drain and some stacks of standard Blight. Keep applying Drain, moving as needed, and with a combination of Wither, Hinder from your Blight, and Spiderweb stacks from Aspect of the Spider, most bosses will stay quite slowed, which should allow you easy movement and dodging while you finish them off. One of the major selling points of this build is how cheap it is to begin and how little investment you need to do most content within the game. a budget weapon being the Cane of Unraveling, a solid choice for endgame that can carry you through most of the content. As an upgrade, we have a crafted spellbow. You can find a guide to crafting this linked at the top right of the video now. This bow will give your Essence Drain 6 levels when combined with a level 3 in power and will cost roughly 5 Exalt to craft. That's 6 link, color, and all. Keep in mind that you can also simply buy this bow for about the same amount. However, I crafted it because it's much easier to do so early on in the league. And of course, once you're using a bow, you'll need a quiver, and that quiver is going to be Soul Strike. This provides us a large boost to Energy Shield, as well as some dexterity that we'll need later on. It does provide faster start of Energy Shield recharge that will be helpful until you get the Devouring Diadem. For body armor, we have 2 choices. Due to our Ascendancy Escape Artist, we're able to make use of a high evasion chest piece and still maintain a good amount of Energy Shield. Our budget choice is Kintsugi. It has high evasion, life, resist, and a unique modifier that causes you to take 20% less damage if you haven't been hit recently. This synergizes extremely well with the high amount of dodge and evasion that our build has. The upgrade for this is Hiri's Ire. It has a massive amount of evasion, dexterity, and 10% spell and attack dodge, which will provide us even more layers of defense within our build. For our helmet, you can begin with an Energy Shield rare that has any resists you need, eventually upgrading to the Devouring Diadem. This provides Energy Shield, the Eldritch Battery Keystone, as well as a 10% chance for Energy Shield recharge to begin every time you use a skill. When you combine this with the Wicked Ward Keystone, this makes an almost constant Energy Shield recharge, as well as triggering Feast of Flesh, which will give us a boost of health, mana, and Energy Shield every 5 seconds. On top of that, if you socket your aura setup as well as an Enlighten in this, it will give you a much larger mana pool due to the buffed level of Enlighten and the reduced mana reservation. As for helmet enchants, the go-to would be 40% Essence Drain damage. However, any enchant for Essence Drain or our other abilities would work fine. Remember, as always, helmet enchants are not necessary. For boots, I suggest obtaining a pair of rare Energy Shield boots with life, movement speed, and resist. If you can afford them, you can obtain Shaper and Elder boots that have a chance to dodge attack or spell hits as well. Alternatively, if your resists are solid, you can opt for Adziri's Step, but these are not ideal in my opinion. One other note is that you may need to utilize the Varici coloring technique to be able to get your boots to be the proper colors for the Wither Totem setup. You can look online, but basically what this means is that you craft 2 sockets on the pair of boots, craft both of those red, and then go back and forth between 2 and 3 sockets on the crafting bench until you get your 3rd red socket, and then craft 4 sockets to obtain the 4th blue. For enchants, I suggest increased movement speed if you haven't been hit recently. Our build doesn't get hit very often, and this is a solid source of movement. In the glove slot, we're looking for Energy Shield gloves with high life and resists. If you can afford them, you can also obtain Elder gloves that have the % to chaos damage over time multiplier modifier. In the belt slot, we're looking for high life, Energy Shield, and resists. Ideally, you would like to get a Stygian Vise to be able to slot in an additional Abyss Jewel, and for endgame, this is the preferred slot to enchant with Aspect of the Spider. You can enchant any piece of gear, but this is the easier one to find room on. In the amulet slot, we're looking for stats, life, Energy Shield, and resists. Ultimately, in the endgame, we are looking to find a Hunter amulet with +1 to level of all Chaos skill gems, but this can be extremely expensive. You'll be looking to craft +1 to minimum endurance charges on your amulet once that craft is available as well. As for anointments, we have 2 options. For a defensive option, we have Freedom of Movement. This provides us movement speed, dodge, and a chance to gain phasing on kill. This is the cheaper option, and the anointment oils are Clear, Sepia, and Violet. For an offensive option, my suggestion is Corruption. This provides us a heavy source of damage and allows us to skip some less than ideal travel nodes in a section of the tree that isn't fully ideal until much later in the game. The anointment requires Crimson, Black, and Black oils. For rings, we're looking to obtain the majority of our resists here. Look for life and resists. Ultimately, you're looking to enchant +1 to minimum endurance charges on both rings once you have that enchant. Also, consider using the resist quality catalyst on your rings to get an extra boost of resists. For flasks, the only unique flask that we use is Witchfire Brew. This provides us evasion rating and a smoke cloud that inflicts blind on our enemies as well as increased damage over time, and our source of the Despair Curse. For jewels, starting out with Cluster Jewels, unfortunately, they're not really ideal for this build as we have many points to put in on the base tree. I suggest that you obtain a single medium Cluster Jewel with Wicked Paul, Eldritch Inspiration, and a jewel slot that can be used for a rare jewel. There are plenty of other jewels that are decent for this build, but your points are generally spent better elsewhere. There is a list of jewels that are good for this build in the notes section of the Path of Building. As for standard jewels, we're looking to use a single Spreading Rot jewel, which allows us to inflict hinder on our enemies and cause them to take increased chaos damage. We also can utilize the Inertia jewel on the right side of the tree to provide us a boost to strength, and rare jewels with damage over time, spell damage, life, and any other useful stats. For a more expensive option, you can look into Watcher's Eye with mods that fit our auras, as well as a Brutal Restraint Timeless jewel with the Desperate modifier to provide us Wind Dancer and some extra dexterity. Essence Drain Contagion is one of the most solid and dependable builds for anyone making their first foray into solo self-found, as a league starter or just for someone who wants to farm Legion Stones and Blight encounters with ease. I can't recommend this build enough as it ticks almost all of the boxes for a solid overall build that can do just about anything. Only thing you might struggle on would be the absolute endgame encounters like Uber Elder, but even those can be overcome with some gear investment. Remember, if this guide helped you out, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see new videos that come out from me, and don't forget to like the video to support the channel. It helps boost things in the algorithm and gets this video to more people. As always, thanks for watching, I'm Big Ducks, and I'll see you in the next video.